This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome everyone to Too Good to Be True, and of course, thank you to all the listeners. Are you ready for a revealing show about Jonestown? Before we start getting into details, let's just briefly talk about psychic insight and how we apply it.
We choose a subject, then research it, and based on that research, we determine what we think needs to be explained by creating a series of questions. Then Justina provides psychic insight to answer those questions. At the end of the process, we have psychic insight into a subject. The psychic insight is narrated towards the end of the show. Accepting the psychic insight is a question of individual belief. Now let's go through the disclaimers.
Here are the disclaimers. Neither of us claim to have any expertise in any subjects that we discuss. We relate information we find through research and the psychic insight. We are always delighted to hear from the listeners. The show only lasts an hour. We don't have the time to present exhaustive research on any topic. This means that there will be information that we miss. We want to provide a basis for the psychic insight. We don't care if a theory turns out too good to be true, as the show name suggests. We are only interested in finding out more of the truth about topics. Spirit can only relate insight that is appropriate for our time in history. Free will cannot be affected. Only comments that are appropriate for our time can be given through the psychic insight. Much of the subject matter in shows will have already been covered again and again in other shows. We want to look into subjects in a new, different way and be thought-provoking. We are not good with pronouncing names. We apologize. And the last disclaimer is, neither of us have expertise as investigative journalists. If we have misstated anything, we apologize in advance. For any of those involved, or anyone who has lost loved ones, we especially apologize if anything is misstated, and we're sorry for the loss of life involved in this tragedy.
Thank you, Justina. You chose the subject of Jonestown.
Yes, I did. There is an explanation that was widely reported, but there are stories that what has been reported is not all of the truth.
Do you want to set the scene or do you want me to?
You have been researching the background more than I have, so why don't you start with the Jones for which Jonestown was named?
That was Jim Jones, who was born in Crete, Indiana in 1931. He would be 85 years old if he were alive today. By the 1950s, he had graduated from college and his career was as a church minister. In 1955, he established the Wings of Deliverance Church in Indianapolis that was later to be known as the People's Temple. Apparently fearing nuclear war, he moved his church from Indianapolis to Northern California, finally settling in San Francisco in 1971.
That's odd. Nuclear war could have just as likely to destroy San Francisco as anywhere else. For whatever reason, a minister moving his church seems strange. Churches usually stay where they are, along with their elders and congregation, with ministers moving around. It sounds like Jim Jones's church wasn't a normal church with a normal minister.
Yes, by this time, Jim Jones was calling himself the prophet, and he became fixated with power. The People's Temple was being viewed from the outside as a cult. Jones was suspected of stealing money from his followers for his own use. The church demonstrated it was a cult by uprooting and emigrating to Guyana in 1977. The People's Temple formed an agricultural commune with hundreds of followers joining Jones in the foreign country. The commune was informally called Jonestown.
I don't know anything about Guyana except it is in South America.
Yeah, the Republic of Guyana, one of the smallest countries in South America, is on the northern coast of the continent, bordering with Brazil and Venezuela. Guyana was used as a plantation by the British, but gained independence from the British Commonwealth in 1966. Guyana's official language is English. Georgetown is the capital with a population of around 120,000. The nation's economy depends on agriculture and mining.
I was wondering how hundreds of Americans, including infants and children, could just show up in Guyana and start living there.
That's an interesting point. According to the New York Times, dated December the 24th, 1978, the government of Guyana turned a blind eye to the immigration and also to the activities in the People's Temple commune.
What was going on in the commune?
Jones apparently had taken away passports, millions of dollars from his followers, and controlled the commune by brainwashing, blackmail, death threats, and beatings, as well as possibly by murder. He also rehearsed for large-scale ritual suicide.
Word must have got out that the cult members were being abused. How did Jones keep the authorities from not closing down Jonestown? It must have been more than just the government of Guyana turning a blind eye.
Jones was adept at public relations and made charitable and political donations. Allegedly, sexual favors were being extended to politicians. There were also threats of mass suicide if the government took action.
Friends and relatives of the commune members back in the United States must have started to get an idea of what was going on.
Yes, word got back to the United States to relatives and friends of followers, prompting an investigation. In November of 1978, United States Congressman Leo Ryan, whose district was in California, visited Guyana. Joining him was a delegation, including members of the press and also concerned relatives.
We'll have to continue talking about Jonestown and what actually occurred there after this short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True. And before the break, we were just introducing Leo Ryan, who was visiting Guyana to see what was happening there. So going back to that point, hopefully the delegation would report its findings and the United States government would force the government of Guyana to act and close down Jonestown, probably with the rest of Jim Jones.
That must have been the hope, but as we all know, things quickly went badly wrong. The sequence of events, according to official reports, is as follows. On November the 14th, 1978, Leo Ryan and his delegation arrived in Georgetown, Guyana. On November the 17th, 1978, Leo Ryan and his delegation arrived at the People's Temple commune known as Jonestown. On November the 18th, 1978, the visitors are set to return home. Some People's Temple members from the commune want to join them in their truck to go back to the United States. Other members of the People's Temple try to stop them, but they escape and the truck continues to the Port Kaituma airstrip, from which they were to depart in 2 aircraft. The escaping party are fired on by members of the People's Temple, with 5 dying from gunshot wounds and 11 wounded. The fatalities were Congressman Leo Ryan, photographer Greg Robertson of the San Francisco Examiner, cameraman Bob Brown from NBC, reporter Don Harris from NBC, and Patricia Parks from the People's Temple, who was trying to escape. Jones gives orders via radio for members of the cult outside the compound to commit suicide. A mass suicide plan is enacted. Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, tranquilizers, and sedatives is first given to infants and children. It is then consumed by adults. Jones is killed by a gunshot wound to the head, which might have been self-inflicted.
How did events deteriorate so quickly? Presumably, the murders, including the ambush at the airstrip and mass suicides, were ordered by Jim Jones. What is known about the visit?
Apparently, the visit with Congressman Leo Ryan's delegation was tense. Jim Jones denied any suggestions of any wrongdoing. Several members of the commune had slipped Leo Ryan notes asking for help to escape. Sources say the commune was maintained by armed guards, presumably to keep people in rather than keep people out. I've seen a picture of regularly spaced huts in the commune. From that, it could be argued that the site looked more like a prison camp than an agricultural community.
Why did Jones give the orders that he did?
Trying to logically explain the conduct of a deranged person is difficult, but presumably the inevitable outcome would be the closing down of Jonestown. So Jones was going to bring it all to an end on his own terms.
Couldn't he have just made an escape after the delegation left, or just shot himself and left it that? Why did hundreds have to die, unless Jim Jones was completely insane and his followers totally brainwashed? How many survivors were there?
Fewer than 100. Some defected that day, some were in Georgetown.
What was the final death toll?
Officially, there were 909 fatalities from the People's Temple, including over 200 infants and children. This was in addition to Congressman Leo Ryan and the 4 others at the Port Kaituma airstrip.
Were there any prosecutions following the mass murder-suicide?
There was only one criminal prosecution in the United States and one in Guyana. Eventually, in the United States, Larry Layton was convicted of conspiracy of aiding and abetting the murder of Leo Ryan and of the attempted murder of Richard Dwyer. Dwyer was Deputy Chief of Mission of the United States Embassy in Guyana and was part of Congressman Leo Ryan's delegation. In Guyana, Chuck Bikeman served 5 years for attempted murder and later returned to the United States.
Who was Larry Layton?
Larry was one of Jim Jones' top operatives. He pretended to be a defector and traveled to the airstrip with the delegation. There, Larry shot and wounded 2 people and attempted to shoot a third. He was released from jail in 2002. He was originally acquitted of murder charges in Guyana, with brainwashing being part of his defense.
What else happened after the events of November 18th?
Richard Dwyer, who we mentioned before from the United States Embassy, took charge. The remains of the dead from Jonestown were airlifted home by the United States Air Force.
What you have covered so far is in line with the official version of events. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there has been a lot of conjecture that the general public has not been given the entire story. What information was there at the time to suggest that there was more to the events that had been widely reported?
Yeah, that's true. So many people following and obeying a madman to their deaths is hard to comprehend. But at the time, I never really questioned what had been reported as actually having occurred. But I didn't take much notice at the time. I didn't take much notice of the details, except of course being shocked by the loss of life, especially to the infants and children. But I do recall that the reported loss of life changed over the days following the tragedy. I think in 1978, people were just appalled at what happened and believed their television sets. I think that it took the use of the internet, especially over the last 2 decades, for alternative accounts to come forward.
Wouldn't doubts be raised as more and more bodies are discovered? If they were not found in the first place, they must have been in different places.
I'm not so sure. The deaths occurred in and around Jonestown, and they must have had an idea of how many people were in the commune. The original body count reported by the Army in Guyana was 408, but was progressively revised to 775, 800, 869, and to the final body count of 909. Some sources quote 913, which would be almost correct if the deaths at the airstrip are included. However, some reports say that 912 died from cyanide poisoning.
The Army in Guyana, who were the first at the scene, counted less than half of the final count. If we take the initial 408 as being accurate, where did the other bodies come from? What evidence is there that the entire story has not been told?
Apparently, as more bodies were removed, more were found. The website, theunredacted.com, goes into details on apparent inconsistencies besides the increasing body count. The website claims that there were no traces of cyanide found in the container of Kool-Aid. There were vats of Kool-Aid, actually. One of the first 100 bodies examined by Dr. Leslie Mutu, Guyana's most senior pathologist, 83 had puncture marks between their shoulders, with Dr. Mutu concluding that the victims had been forcibly injected. According to this source, the tragedy appears to be more about mass murder than mass suicide.
But still assuming mass suicide started, surely the horror of the situation would have shaken some of the surviving people so much that they would have tried to prevent what was happening. What evidence was there that cyanide was involved?
According to the unredacted.com website, cyanide crystals were found in the Jonestown medical supplies, plus syringe and bottles containing the poison in liquid form. Also, bottles of cyanide, marked as Valium, were found scattered on the ground. Valium is, of course, a tranquilizer used to treat anxiety. This suggests that victims would have thought they were taking a tranquilizer and not poison. There were other issues with the official version of events being a mass suicide.
So far, this seems really like a mass murder. But what other evidence is there that the official version was not based on fact?
Apparently, besides the puncture wounds, dozens of bodies had gunshot wounds, while some others had wounds from crossbows. Dr. Mutu concluded that 80 to 90% of the bodies examined indicate the cause of death was not suicide.
The Air Force airlifted bodies back to the United States. What were the findings from the autopsies?
Autopsies were not conducted back in the United States. Many of the bodies were illegally cremated without relatives seeing remains, while hundreds remained unidentified. Only about 1% of the total number of bodies were autopsied.
That would have meant that the evidence collected by Dr. Mutu was the only evidence available. Wouldn't that been used for an inquest or inquests to determine cause of death?
The evidence and samples that Dr. Mutu had gathered mysteriously disappeared while being shipped to the United States. The only surviving eyewitnesses to murder were at the airstrip. One of the journalists took a picture of a gunman firing from a trailer behind an agricultural tractor. There were no surviving eyewitnesses to the events at Jonestown, as far as I can find out.
There must have been at least one inquest. Did an inquest actually happen?
In December of 1978, a 6-day inquest was held by the government of Guyana into deaths at Jonestown. I'm going to quote from the website, Alternative Considerations of Jonestown and People's Temple. The transcript referred to is the transcript of the inquest. Quote, the transcript includes testimony from Guyana's Assistant Commissioner of Crime, C.A. Skip Roberts, Guyana's Chief Pathologist, Dr. Leslie Mutu, several local Guyanese government and police officials, Jonestown survivors Odell Rhodes, Stanley Clayton, Tim Carter, Mike Carter, and Mike Prokes, and Temple member Herbert Newell. The document concludes with a one-page finding of the coroner's jury that Jones and persons unknown were responsible for the deaths in Jonestown. The jury also named only 2 people, Anne Elizabeth Moore, who died of a gunshot wound, and Maria Katsaris, who drank the brew, as suicide victims, unquote. The quote continues regarding the transcript of the inquest. Quote, the blacked out deletions were made by the FBI, but were being challenged in litigation. There are also 2 pages missing from the original, unquote. Just to repeat the findings, aside from the 2 deaths being suicide, cause of death was that Jones and persons unknown were responsible. Therefore, the inquest determined that the cause of death for over 900 people, with the exception of the 2 victims, was not suicide. But the inquest does not specifically state homicide. As stated, parts of the transcript from the inquest are blacked out or missing. The Jonestown survivors mentioned must have been either at the airstrip or among the 100 who were not at the commune on November the 18th, 1978.
Why would the FBI have jurisdiction on foreign soil?
The FBI have jurisdiction in protecting American citizens overseas from acts of terrorism, etc., but only when invited to do so. Therefore, if homicide were a possibility, they would have jurisdiction if invited by the government of Guyana, which they must have been.
What other evidence was there found at the camp that we haven't discussed yet?
Once again, I'm going to quote from the website, theunredacted.com. Vast quantities of antipsychotic drugs were found at the site, far in excess of what would normally be needed for 900 people. The camp also hosted a sophisticated hospital, and Jonestown residents were reportedly given medical assessments on an almost daily basis. Clearly, whatever Jonestown was, it was no ordinary agricultural commune. Was it, as some have suggested, actually a mind control operation? Were the bizarre stories of brainwashing and suicide rehearsals actually part of some other sinister medical experiment? Unquote. Antipsychotic drugs are the type of drugs that might be used on patients with delusional disorders such as schizophrenia. Normally, only a small number in the population would need to have antipsychotic drugs prescribed for them. Also, having an almost daily medical assessment would be unusual under normal circumstances.
Well, it looks like this story is getting stranger and stranger with what was reported and then other things found on the scene. But let's continue talking about Jonestown and then get into the questions in the Psychic Insight after this short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True. And before the break, we were talking about some alternative theories and some strange different events that happened at Jonestown. So it seems from this information that Jonestown was less of a people's temple and more of a mass mind control experiment.
Yes, Congressman Leo Ryan's family thought so. They filed a lawsuit 2 years later alleging that Jonestown was part of a CIA mind control operation called MK Ultra.
What is MK Ultra?
There's a wiki page dedicated to Project MK Ultra, which states that it was officially disbanded in 1973, 5 years before the Jonestown tragedy.
What was the purpose of the project?
No less than the United States Supreme Court provides some interesting information, included in the case Central Intelligence Agency versus Sims, decided on April the 16th, 1985. Here is a quote from the Supreme Court website. Between 1953 and 1966, the Central Intelligence Agency financed a research project codenamed MK Ultra that was established to counter Soviet and Chinese advances in brainwashing and interrogation techniques. Sub-projects were contracted to various universities, research foundations, and similar institutions, unquote. Incidentally, the court held that it was legal for the CIA to withhold information from Freedom of Information requests in order to protect their sources.
There's no dispute then that the United States government financed research into brainwashing, but had ended its Project MKUltra research in 1966, according to the Supreme Court, but according to Wikipedia, the project ended in 1973.
It was a large project with, according to Wikipedia, 44 colleges and universities, as well as hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies being involved, giving a total of over 80 institutions. As background, as early as the Korean War, captured Americans had been brainwashed by their communist captors, so there would not be a great surprise that research was going on in the United States.
So, because of the Cold War and the Korean War, there was Project MKUltra, but the Cold War didn't end until 1991. Why would Project MKUltra end either in the 60s or early 70s?
Yeah, the Korean War has no peace treaty, so it hasn't officially ended. Perhaps details of the experiment started leaking out. By 1977, Project MKUltra was the subject of Senate hearings. Senator Ted Kennedy, who dominated questioning, was instrumental in revealing that the project ran experiments with LSD. That was the infamous drug in the 60s and 70s used in the counterculture of the time. LSD was used by the late Jimi Hendrix, who died due to a drug overdose. It was no secret that Beatles used LSD to help inspire their music. It is a drug strongly associated with flower power, the non-violent ideology of the late 60s and early 1970s.
Are you suggesting that Project MKUltra manipulated popular culture, as well as possibly being connected to the Jonestown story?
Honestly, don't know what to think, but I've always wondered how some cultural movements were started. However, in popular culture, brainwashing came to the fore in 1962 with the fictional movie The Manchurian Candidate. Word seemed to be out on the streets that brainwashing was possible and could be conducted outside of prisoner war camps.
I don't want you to reveal the plot, but presumably someone was programmed to do something that they were not conscious of. But when did Project MKUltra end unofficially?
The general belief seems to be that mind control experimentation has not ended, even if MKUltra was closed down. If our potential enemies might use mind control, that potential threat would need to be countered. If you can take over the minds of your enemy, then you've won the war.
Was there other evidence of CIA involvement?
According to the website, theunredacted.com, the location of Jonestown was the same as that for a CIA training camp that had been previously sited there, but had been closed down.
What was the camp used for?
Apparently for training of mercenaries as part of covert operations in Angola, which is in southern Africa. There had been a civil war in that country starting in the 1970s following independence from Portugal.
That doesn't mean that Jonestown had connections with the CIA. It could just mean that the site for the commune was available. The airstrip being sited there is interesting, though.
I'll quote again from the website, theunredacted.com. George Philip Blakey, a pivotal figure in the forming of the Jonestown community, placed a $650,000 down payment on the land in 1973. It was Blakey more than anyone who was eventually responsible for the People's Temple relocating to Guyana, far from the scrutiny of the US authorities. Blakey was also an agent of the CIA involved with their clandestine activities in Angola. Although a member of the Jonestown community, Blakey conveniently absented himself on the day of the massacre, unquote.
If this is true, then we have to wonder who was being controlled. Just Jim Jones' followers or Jim Jones and his followers. But how do we know that the name George Philip Blakey was not made up as a means of connecting Jonestown with the CIA, and all of this is just a story?
George Blakey was married to Deborah Layton, whose brother Larry Layton, as we have mentioned, was the only person convicted in the United States of any crime following Jonestown. Ironically, Deborah Layton was believed to be a whistleblower and was instrumental in Leo Ryan visiting Jonestown in the first place. Even stranger, apparently Deborah and Larry's father, Dr. Lawrence Laird Layton, was a government scientist researching chemical and biological warfare and was a fundraiser for Jonestown, but not a member of the People's Temple.
This is all getting really strange. If you're going to make up a story, this wouldn't be the type of story you would make up. On the other hand, was there any evidence or other theories suggesting that the official version was based on some actual events?
There's more evidence, if it were needed, that Jim Jones was not in his right mind. He apparently sometimes ripped up Bibles during sermons and threw a Bible on the floor on one occasion, claiming that the congregation was looking at his Bible and not at him.
Is there any direct evidence to support the official version of events?
There is a tape which records a meeting that Jim Jones called to order the mass suicide. He told his followers that troops were coming to destroy them. The tape includes a statement from Jim Jones that they were not committing suicide, but it was going to be an act of revolution. Making the tape more plausible is that the followers are expressing disagreement and offering alternatives at the beginning of the meeting.
How do we know the tape wasn't tampered with?
We don't, but apparently it contains gaps and exclusions, so it might not accurately relate to all the events. The tape is available on YouTube. At the start, Jones seems to be blaming the shooters at the airport for their situation when he apparently ordered them to do it. The voice of Jones, calm for the horrific directions he was giving, is certainly creepy.
I think it's time for the psychic insight. Again, we have to be sensitive to the fact that some of the people involved may be alive today. Also, loved ones who met an untimely death will still be remembered. We apologize in advance if any of the questions appear insensitive, and we are just trying to get the truth about what happened. Do you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, I will go ahead. Was fear of nuclear war the real reason that Jim Jones moved the People's Temple eventually to San Francisco? Or was Jones being controlled and told to do that?
So, it was not fear, it was more of control, yes.
Was the control of Jones on his people or control of Jones?
Both.
Why did Jones start referring to himself as the prophet? Had he lost his sanity, or was he being controlled?
He was being controlled in a way. He was also trying to use manipulation tactics.
Was Jones taking his followers' money for his own use?
Yes.
Was it Jones' decision to move Guyana, or was he being controlled and merely followed orders?
It was his decision in that case.
Was there any connection between Jones and the People's Temple and any government project to research mind control?
Yes.
Was the government Guyana complicit in the setting up of Jonestown due to bribes and coercion?
Yes.
Who funded the purchase of Jonestown and the setting up of the commune?
So some of it was the people and other was private donations.
Was the CIA involved in setting up Jonestown?
Not the CIA, but other organizations, yes.
Was the commune like a prison with armed guards posted?
There were armed guards, yes.
Had followers had their passports and money confiscated by Jones?
Yes, and other personal belongings.
Inside the community, was there brainwashing, blackmail, death threats, beatings, and murder, as well as rehearsals for large-scale ritual suicide?
Yes.
So all of those?
In different ways, yes. And for the mass suicide, it was only some of the followers who had agreed to perform during that part, not all of them.
Were some of the followers wishing to leave the commune, as evident from the note slipped to Leo Ryan?
Yes.
How many of the followers wanted to leave the commune by the day of the visit?
By the day of the visit, it was about half. But when the visit actually occurred, more wanted to leave when things got more scary.
Why did Jones order some of his followers to follow Leo Ryan and his delegation to the airstrip?
Basically, as a way to scare them and to show them what everyone's capable of. So basically to show they were powerful and they have a lot of power and force in numbers.
Did Jones actually order the death of Leo Ryan?
Yes.
Was the death of the journalist an accident, or was that intended as well?
Intended.
Was Jones planning the destruction of the People's Temple before he ordered the followers to follow the visitors to the airstrip?
Yes, he knew way before.
Why didn't Jones just allow the visitors to return unharmed and set up another commune in another country?
Because he wanted to give a message to the rest of the people and the rest of the people in the U.S. and the world.
What message was that?
That visitors were not allowed and that they had power in their numbers and in their group.
Did Jones kill himself with a self-inflicted gunshot?
No.
So somebody else shot him?
Correct.
Was it one of his followers?
Yes.
Was that follower under Jones' orders to kill him?
Yes and no. So basically, Jones was planning on dying, so orders were given. But at the last second, he did try to change his mind, but it was too late.
There were around 100 followers who were not at the commune on November the 18th, 1978. How did they know to stay away, or was it just good fortune?
Some of them had been secretly getting information from the inside, so they already had some information and decided it would be best if they would leave for a while.
Was the death toll originally reported by the authorities in Guyana at 408, not over 900 as eventually reported?
Basically, some of the people were involved and tried to minimize it. And also, it was hard with so many people dead to count the bodies accurately.
So there were some genuine mistakes made.
Correct.
Why did as many as 500 bodies come from the original body count?
So basically, the bodies were there, and some of the bodies were killed before the mass suicide part. So that added to the death toll as well.
What was the actual death toll?
Around 900 and something total, not including some followers that were killed previously, which the bodies had not yet been discovered. But we'll have to continue with the questions and the psychic insight after this short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True. And before the break, we were going through the questions and answering it with a psychic insight. So, Dad, can you please continue with the questions?
Sure. Were most of the followers killed by injections, gunshot wounds, and crossbows?
Yes.
Was the Kool-Aid free of cyanide and therefore not poisonous?
There was poison used, but it was by different means.
Were there bottles marked as Valium which contained poison scattered on the ground?
Yes.
Where did the evidence gathered by pathologist Dr. Mutu disappear to?
It basically got destroyed by some people that knew what was going on in Jonestown
Why did it disappear?
because they wanted it to seem like it was a mass suicide where the people decided to kill themselves rather than being murdered.
Were the people from Guyana or from the United States who didn't want the truth to come out?
Some of both.
Why were there so few autopsies?
It was a cover-up since they did not want to basically release information that some people did not want to die.
Was the inquest in Guyana correct in its findings?
Not completely, no.
What did they miss in saying that it was Jones and persons unknown that were responsible for the deaths, with the exception of the 2 suicides?
Basically, what they missed was the evidence. There was a lot of evidence that disappeared that would have proved that it was murder. So there was a lot of evidence that could have been collected right away that was destroyed before it could actually be shown to the public.
If they had all the right evidence, the inquest might have just stated that it was murder or homicide.
Correct.
Why were there large quantities of antipsychotic drugs found in the commune?
Basically, a lot of the people were having side effects to what was going on, so they were drugging up a lot of the members to keep them happy.
What was the reason for the almost daily hospital visits for the followers?
A lot of them were having negative side effects, and some of them were participating in some very strange behaviors.
Was that for being in the commune or for other reasons?
Mostly being in the commune, since a lot of people felt trapped and did have different psychotic breakdowns.
Was Jonestown associated with Project MK Ultra?
No.
Did the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, including drug use, just occur, or was it promoted by outside influences?
A little bit of both.
Does the book and movie, The Manchurian Candidate, have any basis in fact?
Some, yes, but of course, as most movies go, there are some extra things added.
Was Jonestown on the site of a former CIA training camp?
There was different government work there, yes, but not exactly the CIA.
Was government activity the reason for the airstrip being located nearby?
Yes and no. Yes, for different people to come and visit, but also for convenience. So yes, you are correct, but it is more that there was not much other access. It needed to be there for people to come in and out, not just people involved in the government.
Did the CIA fund or help fund Jonestown by purchasing the land?
So it wasn't exactly the CIA, but there were different people involved, yes.
So there were other organizations mentioned earlier and private donors.
Correct.
Were the brother and sister Leighton part of a wider conspiracy, or were they just followers in the People's Temple?
They were followers.
The tape of Jim Jones addressing his followers sounds calm and matter of fact. Is the tape entirely authentic, or has it been altered?
It has been altered.
The Jonestown tragedy is now off the radar. Why isn't there a new investigation?
Because a lot of the evidence is destroyed. So even if there is another investigation, there is not much they can do. And also with Jones gone, there's not really anyone to blame at this point. So basically, it's easier to say it was a mass suicide and then move on than actually try to investigate. And again, with that being a while ago, it would be hard to get any solid evidence to actually prosecute anyone for their actions.
What were Jones and the people behind Jones trying to achieve by creating Jonestown?
So one, they were trying to experiment with having a place where people would basically follow their leader. So you can think of it in a way like somewhere with a dictatorship where they were experimenting with that idea. And also associated with that, there were experiments going on with different psychological medications and different psychological tactics. So it was an area where you have people isolated, where you can basically treat them as your subjects. So there were different experiments going on with that as well.
Was it the government or private organizations behind the experimentation?
Private organizations.
What can we learn from the events at Jonestown?
Basically, the first point that is a touchy one, but needs to be brought up, is that there's emotional and psychological abuse. So that you can see that in this event, it is not only a lot of people emotionally abused and psychologically abused, as well some were physically abused. So again, when you see someone go through this, it's very hard to intervene, but there needs to be intervention when something like this is out, especially if it's in the public eye. And some of the family members did see what their other family members were going through, but it was hard to get them help. And also, there's a lot unknown about the brain and psychology and how the mind actually works. And some people take it to the extreme with extreme experiments and try to push people to their limits.
The followers that committed the murders, were they higher up in the organization, closer to Jones?
Some of them, yes. Some of them were given basically ultimatums where their families were going to be hurt if they did not actually follow orders. So there were some followers that actually did it because they wanted to, and some that were basically in horrible situations where it was either them or their families.
So their families were going to be killed anyway if they were in the commune, but were they in some other places?
Families in other places.
That's the end of the psychic insight, but is there anything too good to be true?
I guess that over 900 people didn't commit suicide by drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. The mind control was not as complete as what we have been led to believe.
Was mind control at Jonestown not being as widespread among the followers as we have been led to believe too good to be true?
That depends on what you are prepared to believe.
Taking alternative explanation for events and a psychic insight together, it appears what happened was actually mass murder as part of some mind control experimentation, and it was all covered up after the fact.
Jonestown isn't the only episode of mass fatalities associated with a cult, is it?
No, there was Heaven's Gate in California in 1997. Before that, starting in 1994, there was the Order of the Solar Temple with deaths in Canada and Switzerland.
Heaven's Gate sounds really strange.
Yes, apparently 39 members committed suicide in order to reach an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
What about the Order of the Solar Temple?
A total of 71 people died in 1994, 1995, and 1997 by murder-suicide, by deliberately setting buildings alight. Apparently, they were trying to escape the hypocrisies and oppression of this world.
I think that's enough on the subject of these very strange events, except to say that mind control within cults seems to occur in some instances.
Yes, maybe it's time to be a little bit more cheerful and talk about our Facebook page.
Yes, so just switching topics a little bit here is that we do have a Facebook page. So if you go into Facebook and you type in Too Good to Be True, and the first two is spelled TWO, you can go there, find our page, and you can interact with us on there. You can like our page and then comment and suggest any future ideas. So if you're interested, for example, in these other cults, mass suicide situations, we would love to hear that. If you're interested in monuments, like Dad, you always want to talk about, you comment. Do you have anything to add to that, Dad?
Yeah, you seem to be fading away, Justina. Yes, if you, I guess, if you want to avoid having to talk about the big figures on Easter Island or something else like that, you better send in some ideas. We still haven't had a suggestion for the Loch Ness Monster, and I guess any suggestion will be taken seriously. I guess. Are you back with us, Justina?
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me all right?
You're loud and clear.
Good. I just want to make just one comment on our show today. The topic of mental health and families came up in the Psychic Insight, and I just want to put it out there that mental health is very, very important, and it's something that is coming into the public eye more. But if you see a family member going through something, some type of mental health situation, if you see them in a situation where maybe there's some kind of cult situation, something negative going on with them, it's always important to bring that up. And I know in even the situation of Jonestown, there was a lot of family members that did try to get help for their loved ones. So we just want to say that we're sorry for all the losses of all the different family members, and it's very great to hear stories about family members that actually try to help the residents of Jonestown.
Yes, and I think we should say that if we see somebody being stressed or feeling uncomfortable, it may not even be anything to do with mental health, but a kind word or two goes a very long way and helps us all. So why don't you just finish the show for us, Justina?
Yes. So again, if I know I was fading earlier, if anyone wants to go to our Facebook page, like, comment, interact with us. If you have any thing you want to add from today's show, go to Too Good to Be True on Facebook, and the first two is spelled TWO. And of course, thank you to all the listeners. We appreciate everyone for listening, and stay tuned for next week for another show of Too Good to Be True.